Shall we start? Okay. Welcome to MARUF third day, one of the first sessions. Thank you very much for coming and joining us early in the morning. So the title of our session is Architecture, Wall Building, or Wellbeing. And we have three wonderful speakers. But first I want to make a very small intro. By the way, I am Burcu Kütükçoğlu from Bilgi University. And I was asked by MARUF team to moderate this session. I'm very happy about it. So let me make a very brief introduction and then leave the floor to our speakers for 15 minutes presentations. And then I think we'll have some extra time for discussion and questions and answers. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking the MARUF team for organizing such an ambitious, rich, and multi-layered event to discuss almost all aspects of the built environment in relation to current environmental, social, and political crises and potentials. This is really an impressive effort and outcome. I truly congratulate them. And secondly, I'd like to express my gratitude to the team once more for giving us the opportunity to discuss such a significant topic, the relationship of architecture with the well-being of individuals and communities in this specific session. I'm sure we'll listen to mind-opening and inspiring ideas and approaches through the presentations of our speakers, all of whom are renowned architects with impressive portfolios. I'm also hoping to have a fruitful discussion on the topic at the end of our session with contributions from our audience. But before that, I find it useful to quickly go through the brief description of our session on MARUF website, which might help set the tone for our discussions. So this is the brief description of our session theme, I might say. The pandemic transformed our homes from mere shelters into multifunctional hubs, encompassing work, education, socialization, and even exercise. As we try to fit our lives within four walls, the critical role of spatial quality of our well-being became all the more evident. Today, architecture's mandate extends far beyond constructing individual units. There is broad recognition that it must instead foster physical, emotional, and social well-being through sustainable, nature-integrated designs that can bridge the urban-rural divide. But how can this be translated into action? This session will explore architecture's role in shaping livability beyond square meters and how design can enhance both individual and collective flourishing. Yes, without taking more time, I want to leave the floor to our speakers after some, again, very brief intros that I will make about them. Maybe we can start with our guests who kindly joined us from abroad. Maybe we can start with Stefan, if that's okay. So Stefan Klemp completed a carpentry apprenticeship, laying the foundation for his practical understanding of building and design from 1983 to 1985. Between 1992 and 1997, he studied architecture at Biberach University of Applied Sciences, graduating with a degree in architecture. Following his studies, he worked at the Falkner architectural firm in Waltenhofen from 1997 to 2001. And in 2000, he also gained experience at GMS Architekten in Izny. In 2001, he established his own office in Kempten. From 2002 to 2003, he entered into a project partnership with Rainer Lindermeyer, and in 2003, he became a registered member of the Bavarian Chamber of Architects. Between 2003 and 2008, he was a partner at F16 Architekten. In 2008, he was entered into BIAC list of certified urban planners. Since 2009, he has continued his professional journey at F64 Architekten, contributing his expertise in architecture and urban planning. Thank you very much, Stefan, for joining us. Please. Would you like to use this microphone?
Okay. Thank you. Hello. Thank you for coming, and thank you for invitation to Mamara Urban Forum. So, at first I'm gonna tell you a little bit something about our office. So, my name and my what I've done before, she told us at the moment. So, you see, I'm sorry for the poor skill of English. So I was a little bit surprised to come to Mamara Forum. We started in 2003 at 4 architects, our office. At the moment, we are between 50 and 60 employees. So, and I think one of the main intentions of our office, it is more building for well-being, not an hour. So we do it because of that. So can the next how to manage this? This one? No? Yes. Okay. So our main areas of activity, are at one point these are public buildings. Here you can see the Nordic Center in Oberstdorf. It's built for the World Cup, for the Nordic World Cup. So then we are also doing plannings for commercial buildings, renovations, refurbishments. And of course, at first we started by planning private living spaces, houses. And also we are doing the housing construction for owner-occupied housing or socially subsidized housing too. So, also an important point of our activity are sustainable constructions. So here you can see the community hall. I'm going to show you afterward. Children's daycare, also the commercial building Elobo in Leutkirch, and also in St. Afra Church, we built a memorial hall and a community hall in the center of the very small village. So now I chose the project that I think we have successfully implemented, wall building and well-being. So it is a community hall and a restaurant in a small village. They are living around 3,000 people only. So with this project, we've been one of the 4 award winners for German wood construction in 2025. So, to the situation, the restaurant and the the community hall. It's nearby the church and also the I don't know how to say, it's the wie sagt man zum Rathaus? It's a community hall, or yes, okay. So the community hall and a church and our restaurant and the new hall. It's building in the marketplace, and at the other side there will be a beer garden. So inside. So you can see it here in the aerial view of Legau. So combining the use in one building would exceed the scale of the site, while dividing into two building bodies allows for exciting permeable open spaces and diverse connections between indoor and outdoor. Beside the town and a town hall in the west and the church in the north, a slightly greater distance, the two gables of the community hall and the in-shade the space of the market square. To accommodate the scale of the densely built residential area, the roof of the whole building is pulled down more gently into the south to minimize the impact on the southern neighbors. So this. At the narrow point between the buildings, at the passage between square and the beer garden, there are the two entrances to the restaurant and to the hall. And on this axis, straight stairs and elevators lead to the public uses in the lower end and the upper floors. So it's characteristical. So, okay, it's already done. In the basement, the two houses contains auxiliary rooms, a bowling alley, a cloakroom, and the two building sections are functionally connected, allowing, for example, to use the toilets facilities from both buildings. So, and up there, thank you. In the ground floor, here you see the passage between Market Square and the beer garden with the two entrances. So both houses are strongly connected. The exterior space flows through the houses. The two building sections are connected in the base functional, the ground floor, with rooms for meetings and community use experiences where the village's community is palpable. So also in the community hall, the facade to the beer garden, it can be opened and can be used for weddings or something like that. So we try the maximum of sustainability with using CO2 neutral building materials, short transportations, routes through selection of building products and systems by using regional wood. The value creation and strengthening regional networks, detachable connections, prefabricated constructions, renewable natural materials, and untreated wood from sustainable forestry. High durability of materials recycled or can be recycled. So the use for it's confirmed for the villages, for clubs, and it's tailored to the needs of the villages in Lego, especially. A space for encounter and shared experience is created, where the village community becomes palpable, from cultural events such as theater, musical performances, and fancy dress balls during the carnival season, to private wedding celebrations. They find their place here. The use of untreated wood ensures a natural, inviting atmosphere. At least it's also a special thing of F64. We are looking for the finest in detail. So, for example, the foyer with the steel railing, we tried to rebuild the streets of the village like a abstract map. So you can see it in the photo. And over there you can see a small hall. It's just over the restaurant. It's used also for weddings because the view out of the window, it is you can see you see the front of the church over there. So then the other picture is one of the restaurant down there, and down at the right you see the bar, and we tried there to continue the exterior into the interior. So you see it on the next photos. I took some photos from exterior shots. The facade is done with, I think it's called furs or something, Fichte? Spurs. It's spurs, yeah, spurs. Outside we use spurs, LEDs, and inside we used white fire for the wood, also sorrow. So I think this was the last. Yeah, it was the last one, and at least. If there's anybody thinking about our name, it becomes the name we give us for the office. It was when we started in 2003. At first, we had to renovate an old house in the city, and then it became the red one. We called it our office, like the street name. So it's quite easy. We didn't want to use our names altogether. So thank you very much for...
Thank you very much, Stefan, for this wonderful, inspiring presentation. We may continue with Ünal Karamuk, if that's okay. Ünal Karamuk is a co-founding partner of Karamuk Co. based in Zurich. He studied in ETH Zurich and at Harvard University Graduate School of Design. From 2009 to 2012, he taught at ETH Zurich with Professor Christian Keres, and in 2023, he was Kulinen, visiting professor at Rice University. Established in 2010 with Jeanette Kuo, the work of Karamuk Kuo has focused on the intersection of spatial concepts with constructive technologies to approach architecture from its most fundamental sources. The office works on projects of a range of scales, from multifamily housing to complex cultural projects, and has been published in numerous international journals, including Architese, Werk, Bau, Plaswonen, Domus, Casabella, and Architectural Review. In 2018, they were featured in a monograph by El Croquis. Yes, thank you now again.
So I would like to first thank Marmara Urban Forum for the generous invitation. It's very nice to be here. And thank you, Burcu, for the kind introduction. I'm very excited to be back in Istanbul. It has been almost 10 years. And I would like to share some of our work today with you. When we started thinking about today's session's topic and about the architect's role in shaping spaces that we live in and creating spatial qualities for well-being, we immediately thought of these two projects of ours, the Cham apartment residential building and the house on slope. They're both projects that are multi-unit apartment buildings. They're both similar in size, and they were done in our office at the same time. And while they look very different from the outside and express themselves very differently, they share some of the same values when it comes down to the idea of flexibility and multiple use on the inside. I would like to start with the Cham apartments. It's a project that was completed in 2019. And in the small city of Cham, roughly 30 minutes from Zurich, the urban growth has been somewhat unplanned in the last decades, leading to a kind of urban sprawl, you could say. And our project attempted to create a strategy of a more sustainable urbanization that's derived very directly out of its specific site constraints and creating a strong local character. The site is located on the last parcel of the kind of entrance into the historical core, and it enjoys uninterrupted view of beautiful Lake Zug, and also has quite a strong presence at this bifurcation of two main streets. So the prominence of the site is at the same time an asset, but also a bit of an Achilles heel. The lot was undeveloped for decades because of the difficulty of the site and also the contentious neighborhood that wouldn't allow too much new to be built in this area. We were very interested in the particularity of the site, this kind of triangle, but at the same time we had an added challenge to deal with its small size. So the lot that's buildable is only about 200 square meters, and at the western tip the building would be as thin as about 4 meters. So we realized we can only do about 2 average size apartments per floor. Discovery in the local building code allowed us to rethink what we call the Attika, the penthouse level on the top of the building. Instead of doing a typical add-on on the top, we were able to integrate it more directly and seamlessly into the volume, and also allow the volume to protrude out of the footprint on lower levels. So instead of creating or responding to each site or program requirement with like an add-on, we allowed the form itself to essentially mutate where needed, to peel off or to merge. And so the building seems to change its perception when you move around it. There's an ambiguity of it sometimes looking very singular and slender, and in other moments looking more like an aggregation and merge of different elements or volumes. Based on the different conditions of this triangular shape, we wanted to come up with a living experience that would capitalize on this form rather than fight it or work against it. So for us, it was interesting to think of two related spatial anchors, the panorama room and the central hall. The panorama room would be the selling point for the slender apartment to the west, an apartment for extroverts with multiple views and exposures. The central hall, that would be more protected by a crust of spaces around it and would characterize the deep plan of the apartment for introverts. We wanted to create essentially a formal logic that would create a coherent plan. The two halves of the building have very different spatial conditions, but should be derived out of the same DNA. And the logic of the subdivisions should translate into distinct spatial experiences. So we explored this idea with a cellular plan, a non-hierarchical collection of rooms without corridors, where movement happens directly from room to room. This is particularly the case in the deep apartment, where the organizational logic of the plan takes full advantage of the depth and the geometry. Building depth shouldn't be just a problem to solve. It becomes rather an asset and an added value for the apartment. Surrounded by a collection of cells, like individual rooms, loggias, kitchen, bathrooms, this central hall invites its inhabitants to give it meaning, to give it a kind of tailored use and react to their specific needs and lifestyles. It's a space that's landlocked, caught within this deep center of the plan, but it becomes completely porous and dynamic, with light and views in all directions. The loggia, just like another room, is integrated into this kind of logic and has access from all three sides. It's this immediacy of the different spaces to each other that allows for very different, let's say, ways of inhabitation in this apartment to unfold. The central hall becomes the center of life in the apartment, a space that's undetermined and really open for interpretation, a space where paths cross, where people meet, but also that really retreats from the outside and becomes only for its inhabitants. The second project is called House on the Slope. It was completed 2020, and it's a housing project for 5 apartment units in an affluent villa neighborhood with lake views just outside of Zurich. Unlike its monocultural context of single-family homes, our client was interested in creating more of a diversity of units that would attract a wide range of mixed income renters and that would create a small community on this lot. So the apartment building is disguised to look like a single-family home, but its internal organization is far from it. Most of the time when building on a slope, we see projects that maximize or intend to maximize the building envelope by approximating the slope through a terracing. Especially in this area, developers have used the view, the lake view, to market the terraced housing typology. In our view, though, this creates self-similar units, all oriented in one direction, putting the view above other qualities and essentially diminishing the overall result. We chose, instead of directly following the slope, essentially offsetting the existing terrain as a literal application of what's allowable to be built as an envelope. This allowed us not only to integrate the building into this single-family context with the gable roof, but also to produce a series of radically different, distinct spatial characteristics. Different unit types, such as a split-level garden unit, a ground-floor apartment, a split-level or duplex apartment under the pitched roof, they're all jigsaw puzzled together in this compact mass. The client was interested in units that would cater to small families or young professionals who had been priced out of the center of Zurich. So the units are relatively small, but they all have a specific characteristic driven by the spatial sequence of their common areas. Here, seen in gray, essentially the areas that are kind of almost like carved out of these different, essentially, rooms. Each apartment has at least 2 exposures and a generous outdoor space, and at the same time, they're all densely packed around a compact circulation core. On the street side, the building blends into the neighborhood. The houses along the street are all single-family homes, and our project actually is often mistaken for one too. From the garden side, the building reveals its full height and its characteristic roof cantilever that acts as sun shading. The window types and compositions are purposefully made in a way to obscure the individual units inside. So it's hard to see where one unit ends, the next one begins. Rather, you see a giant house in a garden. I would like to take you a little bit through the house right now, starting with the lowest apartment, the garden unit, where the living room is essentially dug into the landscape and then surrounded by views to it. Each apartment is unique, but we also wanted to break away from this typical feel of an apartment, using soft level changes, differentiated room heights, and multiple views. In each case, we tried to find qualities that you would maybe associate more to a house rather than living in an apartment. From the adjacent room that could be used as a bedroom or a study, rooms open both back to the inside but also to the surrounding garden. The next unit is on the ground floor. It's wheelchair accessible directly from the street. And it's perhaps the largest and also kind of, let's say, the grandest in terms of its feeling. We now enter this in the middle into a kind of central hall, and we're basically looking towards this very tall living space. Except for the kitchen, this sequence of spaces that are diagonally going through the width of the building are essentially open for interpretation. They can be used in any way. The central hall can become an extension of the dining space. It can become a place for children to play, or simply it can be a representative central entrance hall into the apartment. Arriving under this sloped roof, we now have an apartment that captures the full length and terraces gently down with following the sloping roofline. Looking back into the other direction, we see essentially the view going through the entire apartment, from the living space over the dining to the kitchen, all the way to the back room and all the way out to the street. This terracing that is apparent was actually possible because in Switzerland we have a rule that allows railing-free apartment units when the drops are basically lower than 90 centimeters. So this really allowed us to have a spatial continuity, as if this was an inner landscape. The next apartment and the last one I'm going to show you is what we would probably think of it as the most generous in terms of the views. It is a loft-like setup, only one room in the back, everything else is open. From an open kitchen and dining area, we step down into a tall living space where the view essentially extends to the outside. And here the roof doesn't just become this kind of protecting element and sun shading element, but really essentially frames this panoramic view over the entire city. As a counter to this total openness of the apartment, in the back we have sort of the opposite, the total intimacy of the private room, a place for retreat, setting back. And this view from the neighbor's lot towards our house actually, for us, captures really the best this idea of this almost like stealth logic of the house, this disguise of multiple units, densely condensed in this mass, but appearing like it fits into a single-family house context and really becoming one with the landscape. So I would like to close with this pair of views that we have now seen. And basically, whether it's the diversity of this idea of the cellular plan in the Kham apartments or the more three-dimensional, let's say, spatial sequence under the roof of the House of the Slope, I think what, in a way, unites both for us is this intense exploration of ideas that create spatial diversity, that invite for multiple ways of using spaces, create meaningful places for exchange and retreat, sort of inside your own four walls. And we hope, therefore, also contribute to a more multi-layered and sustainable living concept in the long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, super interesting projects and presentation. And our last speaker is Selçuk Avcı. I'm going to introduce him very briefly again. Selçuk Avcı is an architect and strategic consultant whose career bridges design practice, sustainability, and thought leadership. A graduate of Bath University, he has taught at renowned institutions including the Architectural Association, the Bartlett School of Architecture, and Delft University of Technology. His early career shaped his strong foundation in sustainable architecture through experience at pioneering firms such as Field and Clegg Bradley Studios, Energy Conscious Design, and Arup Associates. This commitment to environmentally responsible design continues to guide his work. In 1988, Avcı founded Avcı Architects in London, which has since grown into an international practice with offices in Turkey, Italy, Slovenia, and beyond. Under his leadership, the firm has built a reputation for innovative, context-sensitive, and sustainable projects across diverse geographies and scales. Beyond architectural practice, Avcı co-founded Urbanista, a consultancy that guides complex urban transformation projects, and The Circle, a collaborative platform for interdisciplinary dialogue in the built environment. His work has received numerous accolades, including the RIBA Regional Award, the Civic Trust Award, and the Building Award in the UK, as well as LEED Platinum certification for a major project in Turkey. Avcı Architects was also named among the UK's top 50 young practices, recognizing its forward-thinking approach to design and sustainability. Thank you very much, Selçuk, for joining us.
This works? I don't have to do anything? No. Okay. How do you start? Okay. Okay, so I've adapted one of my usual presentations, but tailored it to you especially, Burcu. And thank you for inviting me to take part in this, and it's very good to meet you also. Does this go on its own? Because I'd like to control it myself. May I? Okay. It just went on and then it went back. Okay. So since the theme of the conversation is about wall building, I thought I would start with that idea and kind of touch on the conflict of the idea of a wall at times is not such a desirable thing. As we see in the case of this Trump wall between Mexico and the US border. And also the wall between societies, between different ways of living, different circumstances. And how do you deal with that kind of division in society? It's something that architects don't tend to question. As we continue to talk about our work, things like Gaza is going on. And so I'd like to touch on that, just so that we become conscious of it, that we are talking about very idealized societal ideas as architects, kind of floating above reality. I want us to just be aware that there are other kind of walls that need to be brought down. Anyway, I live in this city, which is a city of beautiful walls. And I'd like to touch on something that happened to us during the pandemic, which kind of initiated in all of us a different way of thinking about walls. We became very attached to our walls, actually. We were very, very happy to be behind our walls, and they were sanctuaries. They were our haven. I lived for 4 months entirely on my own in Istanbul, and I loved that time. Actually, it was one of the most wonderful times in my life. But that enclosure, that sense of being trapped, actually made people hungry for light, for nature, for the ability to contact nature, to access nature. And at that time, during that period, we were invited to do a project in Baku. And obviously the pandemic influenced us. Why isn't this working? It's going to. And the idea of sustainability at that moment became essential. Not just a kind of luxurious idea, but everyone felt this word, the idea of sustainability, encapsulates so many things, so many different things, which are summarized in this diagram, the 17 goals of the United Nations. And a lot of them actually focus on CO2. And it's obviously not just about CO2. Do I get... Okay, there's a bit of a time delay. I mean, CO2 is killing us. Clearly, literally, it's killing us. And if we don't get it under control, it's going to end up in far, far bigger consequences. And as a result of this, global warming is rising exponentially. And in 2024, we reached a target which we thought we wouldn't reach that soon. 1.5 degrees is a dramatic jump from the industrial period to now. And it is actually causing a huge amount of crises. Is it possible for me to get a device that I can control? Çalışan bir şey alabilir miyim? Ya da ben siz devam edin mi diyeyim, ne yapalım? Şu anda çalışmıyor. Ben çalışamıyorum. Yanlış bir düğmeye mi basıyorum? Ha, ya da bir yere mi hedef almam lazım? Okay. Tamam. Basıyorum ama ben basınca çalışmıyor nedense. Sen nereye bastığını... Okay. Kapatıyormuşum. So sustainability as a concept is not something that you just wear as a badge. You have to live the idea of sustainability, and it has to somehow form the holistic construct of how you do things, how you go about your business, whatever area of life that you're dealing with. And these three elements of the ecology, the economy, the equity of society have to be all considered at the same time. And Badamdar Canyon, the project that I mentioned, actually gave us that opportunity. We were invited to a competition. It was a competition between 4 different architects. It wasn't actually concluded. It's kind of still in the air. We don't know what's going to happen. But it gave us an amazing opportunity to think about sustainable living on a large scale. We've had similar projects before, but in the middle of the pandemic, it meant something else. It had a different sensation. And this piece of land, a barren piece of land, is in Baku, looking over the sea. The sea is to the south of the picture. A plain which is completely exposed and landscapeless, actually. No trees on it at all. But this is the pattern of the trees that we propose on the landscape. And where we propose that landscape takes over, that landscape is the dominant element of this development. And wherever possible, obviously natural materials, green roofs, and if possible, some level of micro-farming so that people can feed themselves from that landscape. And being also very aware that the ethical dimension of sustainability means you have to come to contact with the culture. You have to somehow understand the context in which you're in and respond to that local geography, the local dynamics. But most important of all, when we come to a place, we have to study it. We have to try and understand what natural resources it offers you and try to integrate those natural resources and use them, use the potential of these natural resources. And this diagram shows you that there are many different ways, including wind power, because the site has an extreme amount of wind, and ground coupling, coupling the buildings into the ground using passive and active solar design, and obviously rainwater harvesting and composting and so on. But the most important thing was to create a sense of human scale and always to use local materials, local stones, and bring people as close to nature as possible, that their life is infused with nature, that they're engaged with nature, whether in public spaces or in their gardens. They're open out to nature and they can come into contact with nature. And the other aspect of it was that we wanted to eat that nature. We decided that the landscape should incorporate some farming, some micro-level farming, what we call bostan in Turkey. And we wanted to encourage local food production and local farmers to come to the market and sell their produce and encourage that local food cultivation. And the characteristic of the site, which is a bowl that creates a kind of wind tunnel, is a very strong factor. The high winds are so uncomfortable that you can hardly walk on the site. But they then give you an opportunity. So you use that opportunity and create energy from it and light the street lights. These things work very silently. And deal with the wind using landscape elements. Landscape becomes a kind of construction to mitigate the effects of climate. So at a kind of modular level, if you take a strip out of that landscape, which by the way is 1 kilometer long, so it's from one end to the other is 1 kilometer. The cross-section deals with all aspects of society in some sense, in terms of its economic cross-section. So you have from the top of the site affordable housing, apartments, and then the next layer and the next layer until you get to larger and larger buildings, family houses and villas, where the mix actually produces a cross-generational society, not the mono-generational society, which is what gated communities tend to produce. And of course make nature always an integral part of it. The transport could be very sustainable if it's all electrified and there's a kind of local network created which also connects to the outside network and is big enough to have its own waste disposal system. And, why not make waste disposal a fun thing? This is what I experienced in Ljubljana. This is actually a picture from the city that I live in, where you actually have to take your waste to the dustbin yourself. No one comes to your house to collect it. And it's a pleasure to do it. At the end of the day, the objective here was to create communities that engage with nature. So jumping from there to another scale, I want to talk about our approach to sustainability and well-being in different typologies. This is a project that we're doing in Slovenia at the moment, in Kotlje, which is up in the mountains, not very high, about 1,000 meters. A spa hotel where from the ground, mineral water, iron lead-in water comes out. And this hotel is designed for visitors to come and take the waters and relax and get healthy, basically. It's in the middle of a forested piece of land, and you're surrounded by mountains. It's amazing. It's a beautiful place, very quiet. So there we wanted to, again, touch the landscape lightly and engage with the landscape in the most literal sense. So the hotel becomes something that kind of slides out of the landscape. So the plates of green roofs appear as if they're engaging with the topography and coupling with the landscape in more ways than one. Ground coupling, again, we always propagate the idea that you must engage with the landscape both below the ground and above the ground. So here we use a heat exchanger, which is a ground-based heat exchanger, and also encourage natural ventilation. It's a very small hotel. It's about 20 rooms. There's a spa where you can take the waters, a bar where you can drink and eat the food, and look out at nature, basically. So this view is looking at the mountains behind me. And on the other side, where it's coming out of the hill, the landscape literally engages with it, and parts of it actually become intertwined. And right now, it's kind of, actually, it's well beyond this point. This is a camera on site. The other interesting thing about this project is that we applied for a European Union funding, which encourages energy efficiency and ecological sustainable buildings. And one of the early decisions was to use timber as the main structural element, and it was my first experience with CLT. And I must say, it is one of the most surprising materials. I think you use it as well in your projects too, I noticed. And that's the thickness of the walls. The walls are very, very thin. It's a material that's stronger than concrete, believe it or not, and even more fire resistant than concrete sometimes when you cover it properly. So this is the state that it's in right now, and it will be completed next year, and hopefully you will all come and taste the spa waters. This project is jumping to another function, which is an office building, which is an office in Ankara, the Contractors Association in Ankara, which was also a competition. And it's a small building, which is the headquarters of the contractors of Turkey, the major contractors of Turkey, whose aim was to create a building which would be at the highest possible level of sustainability. They wanted also to demonstrate the quality of Turkish construction and the finesse with which they can make things happen. But one of the main objectives was to make a highly energy efficient building, and our target from a standard building to cut by 50% the energy requirement of the building. And to do that, you have to do extreme things. You can't just put shutters on the windows. These are the climate in Ankara. So you can see the highest temperature in the summer is 33 degrees, and it goes down to 21, and sometimes it goes down to 9.6. So there's a lot of, in the summer, when it's very hot during the day, coldness in the night. There's an energy source in the night. And during the day, you're heating the building up, obviously, because you're in the building, there is sunshine, there are people, and they're heating the building up. That's when you need the cooling. So what we do is we created a labyrinth below the building, which is like a cave, a dark cave, and we pass the air through the labyrinth in some way similar to historical examples like this. This is a building in Italy, Custoza in Italy, where a cave was literally used to draw air into the building through floor ventilators there. Just on the left you can see. And this system is very similar in that sense. So this labyrinth is like a cave. And in the summer night, when the temperature goes down to 15, 16 degrees, we cool it so the cave becomes cold. And then during the day, when the weather is hot, you take the hot air in through the labyrinth, and it naturally cools the air down to 17, 18 degrees. And in winter mode, actually, it works in the opposite direction, because in Ankara, it goes down to minus 15 degrees. It gets very cold. But down below, it's still 15 degrees plus. So you have a delta T of 15 degrees, whatever you do. So this investment of digging below the ground results in this graph. What you see there is the temperature in the labyrinth. The blue line is the temperature in the labyrinth, and the red is the temperature outside. And what you want ideally is the green line. And these are actual performance graphs that we took. This is the actual shape of the labyrinth, because the site is a bit strange, and this is the actual labyrinth. We used concrete blocks as heavy as we could find, as thick as we could find, because the whole idea is the weight. The weight is what contains the energy. In other words, it sucks the cold or the heat, and then it releases it gradually. So those louvers you see are automated, and they're controlled by a building management system. We also pass air pipes through the floor, the concrete floor, so the concrete floor becomes an active source of energy as well. And they are then supplying the chill beams which deliver the air down to the people below. And obviously, you have to do very intense solar studies. Whenever we do a project, we do solar studies, and the exposure of the building actually guides the design of the building aesthetically very much. And in this particular case, we wanted to experiment with steel mesh with varying degrees of thickness as it goes around the building, to create sufficient shading so that it doesn't heat up during the day, so that the loads are reduced. Of course, we put solar panels on the roof, and there are a number of areas in which efficiencies are achieved, which enable the building to get LEED Platinum. This final project is an office building in the other end of the country, in Gaziantep, which is an office headquarters for a local company, but it's an international company. Again, we always do some kind of analysis, and in this case, we use the ground, again, to couple the building's cooling needs and heating needs, and use an atrium to create natural ventilation, and surround it with green so that the people working in that building are always connected to nature. And the atrium brings in light deep into the building, and outside, the building form is informed by the need for shading. So our projects are always somehow informed by nature, whether it's the sun or the trees. So these are the projects I wanted to show, and I know people can read that themselves. But I think the point is that I think the well-being is very much in our hands as architects, and we are in control of many, many things. We are decision makers, and we have a huge responsibility. We are trusted with a huge responsibility. So I hope that anyone who's becoming an architect feels that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Selçuk. Amazing presentation. I actually have a few questions and comments, but because we have already exceeded our times and maybe can use some extra minutes to discuss, maybe I can first ask the audience if anybody has questions, comments. I think, yeah, the microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much for the talk. Especially, like, it's great to see some architects who are also doing buildings with wood, Stefan and Avcı architects like you. But my question was actually for Karamuk, Ünal Karamuk. I really appreciate your buildings in general. Like, they are all well designed, like conceptual and construction-wise. But and your talk was about wall building or well-being, and you started with a project which was next to the train tracks, a housing project. I mean, both projects are, I can see it's great with spatially and light-wise. Like that's why you are saying like well-being-wise, it's kind of successful projects. But the first project, the question is, there are other parameters for well-being, like noise and privacy. How is it? Is it functional? Like, is it functioning? In that case, yes. Thank you. Bye.
That's actually one of the main reasons why we did this loggia concept. When you were talking about the Cham apartments, it is very close to the train tracks. We had all sorts of requirements in terms of setbacks, in terms of, let's say, exposure. The noise is, of course, the topic, and the loggia became a typology that allowed natural ventilation. So the building does not have a mechanical ventilation. You have to open windows, and in Switzerland, this is very regulated or very, let's say, strict. If you open windows and you get too much noise exposure, it would fail to permit. So the loggia was a workaround, and also the reason why it's accessible from multiple areas. So basically each of the rooms that is docking onto a loggia can naturally ventilate through it. It has acoustical absorption on top that basically helps the noise from the outside to be dampened within the space of the loggia, and then essentially leave the rooms within the, let's say, permittable levels. So it was, in a way for us, interesting that it became even more of a performative, let's say, part of this idea of the cellular plan. So outdoor and indoor, you don't make that distinction anymore. It's all part of the same system, and the loggias played a crucial role in that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the audience? Maybe later. So maybe I can ask my questions. Actually, I have a very similar question for Stefan and Ünal. I wonder if you had the chance to get user feedback after these buildings that you presented were constructed. And also for Stefan, I wonder if you also had the chance to participate the community in the design making, design decisions of the community hall building.
So yes, of course we had the chance to make the design, and the community went with us. So this was not a problem, and. What happened? It's that the people they use it very much. The community hall. It's, I think at last it's nearly booked over the whole year for weddings and the other things. So there are many weekends. It's already full and. The only thing, the restaurant, there I feel it's not as full as we expected that it is. I think it depends on the one who's rolling the thing. Yeah.
User feedback. I mean, sometimes you also just think no news is good news when it comes down to user feedback. But no, actually, in the Cham apartments, we tend to not get direct feedback from the users anymore. Once we give over the apartment units, they're private. But in the Cham apartment case, our client actually lives in the penthouse unit, and so they are, of course, connected to everything that's going on in the building. So, in terms of let's say, the feedback there, how this particular plan, the deep plan, is being appropriated, I think it's very much appreciated to have this kind of extra space in a way. It's like the space that we give almost a bit like additionally to the ones that everybody expects. Like everybody expects that you have the sort of the kitchen, you have the more formal living room component, you have, let's say, well-proportioned spaces that you can use for studies or for bedrooms. These are kind of like normal things to have, and then the special one in the middle is really the one where we were hoping like people would appropriate it in different ways. Like maybe somebody would even have their home office right in the middle and live around it, or somebody has just a giant play area in the middle for their children. What we do here is that everybody appreciates that space that they can shape in their own ways.
Yeah, I was also wondering, because in both of the projects you presented, I think the units, I mean, in the second one, obviously the units are very different from each other, but also in the home apartments, there is some sort of a change, right, in each flat. So I think that in itself is some source of well-being. That's how I feel. I mean, to provide people with some kind of, diversity, change, which should give a certain identity to their own flat. So I'm sure they should be appreciating it, yeah. And for Selçuk, I mean, I think you made a very good point. I mean, especially in the project in Baku. I think many of the problems we have in architecture are related to the fact that we do not start by thinking about the landscape. I think that when you do that, that automatically solves many of the problems, and you showed some really good examples of that. So I truly appreciate it. I mean, it's not a very difficult thing to do. It's just a mindset, shifting a mindset, and then starting with the landscape, with the natural elements, rather than the built objects themselves. I think it's just, solving many of the problems. It was just a comment, not a question. Maybe I also have a question, actually. So how do you think that landscape, that sort of natural environment that you're planning to create in the Baku project would fit into the larger context? I'm curious about its larger. Would it be a very, foreign, environment, or would it just sort of?
It's like a desert. Okay, the site there's nothing on it except some very sad-looking trees, but then to the north of it is a city. The city has come up to it and stopped there, so there's a boundary. The client wanted to keep that boundary, and we wanted to penetrate it, but we didn't succeed. They were resisting that. So we managed to say, then they must penetrate in that direction. But there's a resistance to that naturally. People want to wall themselves in. But what's really nice about this site is that there's no wall to the other direction. It's a precipice, uçurum. You would die if you decided to go off it. It literally comes like that. It's a very beautiful site, very characteristic, and it has interesting. And yes, I do get a lot of messages from the landscape, architecturally, as well as from the perspective I wanted to talk about, which is how you engage with it physically and dig in. As we used to historically, we've always dug in. We started in caves, and it's an inspiration source for me always. It's a starting point.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I think we are 10 minutes late. So I think we can wrap up. Thank you very much again, once more, for joining us, for presenting these very inspiring, very interesting projects, and making us think about this concept of well-being once more, because it is so much, historically and culturally, bound. So it's always good to rethink what it means for us architects now and here and in all of these different places that we are working. So that's why it was really a very enriching session. Thank you all, and thank you for our audience for joining us, and for, of course, MARUF team for making this happen. Thank you very much.